Nova Astra was once a world where two races, human and Varethi, balanced on uneasy peace. Now, war ravaged its landscapes, sparing neither vast desert plains nor the crystal-laden tundras of the northern hemisphere. The humans, hailing from powerful city fortresses, looked upon the feline like Varethi as cunning intruders. For the Varethi roamed the forests and mountains, claiming age-old birthrights. Between them lay the barrens, a swath of broken land that served as both frontier and graveyard. On the outskirts of this perilous no-man's land stood field medic Zane Tenebro, a lanky figure in standard-issue exosuit, gazing over the lifeless horizon. Behind him stretched the battered remnants of the 7th Human Battalion, reorganizing after a brutal skirmish. Smoke trailed into the crimson sky where the dying sun cast elongated shadows upon the rubble. Zane, having treated a score of wounded that day, carried the sorrow of his profession in his eyes. His uniform was stained with dust and the metallic smell of antiseptics. Though he had sworn an oath to preserve life, the relentless tragedies had begun to wear away his spirit. On Nova Astra, hope seemed a scarce commodity, and Zane, despite his gentle nature, had witnessed more suffering than a soul should endure. As dusk settled, he quietly inventoried his supplies. The latest casualties had depleted bandages, synthetic plasma, and crucial antibiotics. He prayed for a moment of calm to replenish, or at least to catch his breath. News had arrived from headquarters. A new offensive would soon be launched into Varethi territory. Whispers spread that this might be the final push to end the conflict. No one in the 7th was entirely sure if that end would come through negotiation or annihilation. The Varethi, so mysterious and imposing with their lithe bodies and cat-like grace, were rumored to possess new weaponry derived from psychic technologies. Every rumor further fueled the humans' resolve, for to do nothing was to risk subjugation. That night, in the makeshift infirmary beneath a collapsed starship hull, Zane hovered over Private Darren, a soldier whose abdominal wound wept with each labored breath. "Hang on," Zane whispered, injecting a high-strength coagulant. "You're going to be fine." But even as he spoke, he could see the dull acceptance in Darren's eyes. The soldier had seen too many horrors, had felt the closeness of death one too many times, and no words could soothe him fully. When the procedure finished, Zane stepped outside, letting the cold air brush against his sweat-dampened brow. High above, Nova Astra's second moon gleamed faintly. The planet's gravitational dance of two moons painted the sky in ever-shifting patterns of silver and crimson. Here, on the barrens, even the simplest sights looked surreal, an otherworldly canvas of luminous dust swirling with each gust of wind. He closed his eyes to shut out the war, the heartbreak, and the inevitability of more bloodshed. He had joined the Human Defense Corps out of necessity, not zeal. Before the war, he had been a clinic physician in the sprawling city of Heliora, a place known for its towering spires and shimmering solar domes. He had loved that life administering routine vaccines, delivering newborns in the late hours of the night, consoling elderly patients with gentle words. Now, all that gentleness felt out of place on a battlefield. As the next day dawned, the front line advanced once more, and Zane was called forward. The clamor of heavy vehicles rolling across the broken earth drowned out all other sounds. Dust coated every helmet, every rifle barrel, and every face. Private Darren was whisked away for further care. Zane and the rest of the medics marched to a new forward operating base. There, the true horrors of war would greet them anew. Rumors circulated, some claiming that a major Varethi encampment had been discovered near the Aurora Slopes, a region known for its vibrant night skies. Others whispered of an elite Varethi scouting party penetrating deep into human territory. Zane listened quietly, but kept his doubts to himself. For rumors in war were as numerous as bullets fired in anger, and almost as lethal. Little did he know that soon he would become central to a discovery that would shake both humans and Varethi alike, a discovery hidden beyond the barrens, an encounter that neither side could have anticipated. In war, The first victim is often reason. But in this case, fate conspired to preserve something deeper, a spark of unity that could challenge the very nature of the conflict. Each day, the ominous thunder of artillery and the shrieking wind of pulse bolts threaded the air. The 7th Battalion found themselves ever closer to the Aurora slopes, where swirling flurries of glowing snow cascaded across bleak mountain passes. It was here that Zane Tenebro's medical unit established a small triage post in a ruined watchtower, the walls of which still bore scorch marks from an ancient conflict. Late in the evening, after patching up a delirious corporal, Zane volunteered to venture into the lower valley to search for medical herbs rumored to grow in the region. Despite the advanced technology of humanity, natural remedies had not been neglected, and Zane was known for combining conventional practice with medicinal flora. He set out quietly, leaving the watchtower's safety behind. His steps were soft upon the snow, each crunch muted by howling winds. Overhead, the night sky shimmered, tinted by aurora flares that danced in curtains of green and purple light. Zane half expected to be ambushed, for night patrols by Varethi scouts had increased. Every soldier had orders: if you spot a Varethi, shoot on sight. Yet Zane dreaded such an encounter. He carried a sidearm more for ritual's sake than out of any desire to use it. He followed the bank of an ice-choked stream, scanning the crystalline outcroppings for the distinctive blue-white leaves of the medicinal plant. For an hour or more, he found nothing but the bleak hush of the windswept valley. Then, the faintest sound reached him: a moan. So soft it might have been the wind, if not for its unmistakably organic tremor. Curiosity and duty overcame caution. With his heart pounding, Zane crept toward the source. Beneath a jagged shelf of ice, he saw a figure lying motionless. His breath caught in his throat as he recognized the sleek form of a Varethi scout. He recognized the female morphology from her slight build and narrower face had collapsed, wounded by a deep gash along her side. Crimson blood stained the snow, turning it into a disturbing tableau of red shadows in the moonlight. Zane tensed. Protocol demanded he turn the scout over to his superiors. Yet, as he knelt to inspect the wound, his medic instincts overpowered the soldier's training. The young Varethi's eyes fluttered open in panic, revealing slit pupils widening with fear. Her ears, triangular and furred, lay flattened against her skull, indicating either distress or aggression. She tried to speak, but only a breathy rasp emerged, her breath turning to frost in the freezing air, uncertain what else to do. Zane pulled out a field dressing kit, murmuring, "Hold still," even though he was not sure if she understood his words. Gently, he applied antiseptic, then pressed a clotting bandage to staunch the blood flow. Almost immediately, he realized her condition was dire. The wound extended dangerously close to vital organs. Without immediate intervention, she would perish before daybreak. He activated his comlink, but the device only sputtered static. The watchtower was too far, and an approaching storm scrambled all signals. He was alone with this wounded enemy, each second ticking toward an irreversible end. He weighed his options in the stillness. He possessed a portable transfusion kit essential for severe trauma, but it was keyed to human-compatible fluids. The Varethi's physiology was famously incompatible with human blood, or so the official lines declared. Even so, rumors hinted that with the right mixture of agents, a cross-species transfusion might stabilize the patient just enough until advanced care could be administered. Conflicted, Zane stared at the unconscious Varethi's face. Under different circumstances, would she have killed him on sight? Perhaps. Yet, he could not simply walk away, even if she were an enemy. She was a living being in desperate need. Resolved, he set up the improvised transfusion, relying on experimental coagulants to counter any immediate rejection. He worked as swiftly as the environment allowed, ignoring his chattering teeth. While he gently drew his own blood, the storm intensified, sheets of ice-laden wind lashing at his exposed face. He glimpsed the Varethi's eyelids flutter once more, as if she tried to comprehend what he was doing. He offered her a faint smile. "Just hold on," he whispered. "Don't die. Please. At that moment, he felt a tingle up his arm, akin to a mild electric shock. The moment his blood mingled with hers through the transfusion line, his vision blurred, and a fleeting sensation, something like a whisper, brushed against the edges of his consciousness. For an instant, he thought he heard a voice within his mind, though it was too faint and too alien to understand. When the feeling subsided, he focused on sealing the wound. He pressed more bandages over the gash, working until the scout's labored breathing evened. Exhausted, Zane slumped in the snow, gloved hands trembling. The wind's howl died down to a low murmur, as though acknowledging the fragile ceasefire that existed in that narrow slice of night. In the early hours of dawn, the snowstorm finally relented, revealing the battered valley in pale morning light. Zane, still at the wounded scout's side, wondered if she would survive once the sedatives wore off. As the day brightened, he checked her vitals, relieved to find a steady, albeit weak, pulse. He forced himself to stand, joints stiff from crouching in the cold. With great care, he constructed a makeshift sled from supplies in his pack, intending to drag her back toward the watchtower. The path was treacherous. Icy ridges jutted up like knives, and one misstep could send them both crashing into hidden ravines. Despite the hazard, he believed the watchtower's medical equipment was their best chance. Perhaps once the Varethi scout was stable, he could reason with his superiors, maybe even broker some understanding, a fleeting hope, but better than leaving her to die. The journey was slow, with each footfall uncertain on the slippery terrain. The scout remained semi-conscious, occasionally stirring. At one point, as Zane paused to catch his breath, he noticed her gazing at him with those feline eyes, a mixture of confusion and curiosity playing across her pale features. He attempted a comforting smile. "We'll reach help soon," he said, though he was hardly sure of the truth behind the words. She opened her mouth as if to speak, but the cold air stole her breath. Then, strangely, Zane felt a pressure at the edges of his mind, like someone was gently knocking upon a locked door within his head. Though faint, the sensation was unmistakable, an alien presence that did not belong to him. He blinked, momentarily dizzy. Could it be side effects from fatigue, or something else? Varethi, it was said, had latent telepathic abilities. Could she be trying to communicate? Unsure, he continued trudging onward, forging a route through the unbroken snow. As they progressed, the sensation of that silent knock grew stronger. Fleeting images surfaced in Zane's mind, impressions of speed, stealth, and open skies, reminiscent of a Varethi's vantage. He swore he could almost feel the wind whipping across fur, sense fear and adrenaline, see the forest canopy from a vantage high in the treetops. Startled, he pushed the images away, focusing on the present moment. The swirl of confusion and wonder made his head spin. Finally, after hours of laborious dragging, they neared the watchtower's vicinity. Smoke rose from a crude chimney vent, indicating that his fellow medics still held the position. Relief flooded Zane. His arms burned from exertion, and numbness crept in his fingers, but he pressed on. The moment he entered the perimeter, however, a pair of human soldiers aimed their rifles at the sled. Alarm and disbelief flared in their eyes. "What in the name of Heliora are you doing?" Tenebro barked one. "That's a Varethi scout." He raised his hands defensively. She was dying. He managed between heavy breaths. "I couldn't leave her." Before he could offer any explanation, the soldiers forced him to stand aside, searching the wounded Varethi. An older officer appeared, eyes narrowed. "This is a direct breach of protocol," the officer said. "We're under orders to detain or eliminate any Varethi encountered. You know that." Zane's mind reeled. He swallowed hard, summoning courage. "I'm a medic," he said. "I save lives, not end them. And she's seriously injured. Killing her now would be—" He paused, searching for the right word. "It would be barbaric." The officer's lips tightened. "We're in a war, Tenebro. Compassion has limits." Then, after a tense moment, the older man relented slightly. Seeing that the Varethi was indeed unconscious and in no shape to pose an immediate threat. Fine. Put her under guard. If she recovers, HQ can decide what to do with her. Thus, the scout was carried into a small, isolated section of the watchtower. Guards stood at the entry, weapons at the ready. Zane was allowed inside to continue medical care, though under strict supervision. He watched her fragile form on the makeshift cot, chest rising and falling with labored breath. He felt an inexplicable responsibility for her survival, as if saving her life had formed an unspoken bond. Little did he know how literal that bond would prove to be. That night, while exhaustion weighed on Zane, and the battered watchtower was illuminated by lanterns flickering against the stone walls, the Varethi awakened. Guards tensed, training rifles on her, but she was too weak to do more than sit up. Her eyes darted around, full of confusion and pain. When her gaze landed on Zane, she spoke, her voice as soft as winter wind. What is your name?" The words were heavily accented, but intelligible. Zane's breath caught. He took a hesitant step forward, ignoring the guard's sharp warnings. "I'm Zane," he said quietly. "Zane Tenebro. I'm a medic." She blinked, ears flicking slightly. Then, her lips formed a single word, a name, Nima. A pause, followed by a wave of sadness. "I am Nima." Instantly, that silent pressure returned, pressing at the corners of Zane's thoughts. This time, a new clarity arose. He glimpsed feelings of gratitude and confusion threaded through a haze of exhaustion. Somehow, Nima was pushing these emotions into his mind, bridging a gap that neither of them had ever meant to cross. He staggered back, nearly knocking over a tray of medical tools. The bond was tenuous but undeniably present. His own heartbeat thundered in his ears, and he wondered if the transfusion had done something beyond mere life support. Could the rumors about Varethi's latent psychic talents be true? And had their blood commingling opened a door that might never be shut? He made no mention of these sensations to the guards or the officer. For now, he simply stood beside Nima, ensuring her wound would not reopen. Yet, as the long night stretched on, doubt and fear gnawed at him. If HQ discovered the depth of his transgression, or the nature of this strange connection forming between them, what would they do? He feared the answer would be far more devastating than any bullet or bomb. Morning arrived with no respite from tension. Word had spread of Zane's rescue of a Varethi. Soldiers passed by the makeshift infirmary, casting curious or hostile glances. Some muttered under their breath about traitors and fraternizing with the enemy. Others merely shook their heads, unwilling to speak. The officer in charge, Lieutenant Fairburn, summoned Zane for an urgent meeting, brow furrowed in disapproval. "Explain yourself, Medic Tenebro," the lieutenant demanded. Seated behind a rickety metal table, his uniform was crisp, his eyes cold with the reflection of war. "You performed an unauthorized procedure, endangering your own life, and you brought an enemy combatant into our base. This is outright insubordination." Zane stood at attention, face pale but determined. "I did what I had to do to save a life, sir," he said evenly, meeting the lieutenant's gaze. "We're medics. That's our calling. I wouldn't leave her to die." An uncomfortable silence settled as Fairburn studied Zane. Then, a soft sigh. "I've read your record, Tenebro," he said. "You were top of your class. Recommended for advanced trauma care. Known for your empathy. That empathy is a strength, but it may also be a liability out here." He drummed his fingers on the table. "The High Command is anxious for any intelligence we can gather on Varethi physiology. They'll want to question her. Don't be surprised if they send her to some research facility. You've stepped into a political mess." Zane's heart sank. He had no illusions that the Varethi Nima would be treated kindly by military intelligence. "Please, sir," he said, voice trembling slightly. "She's not just some experiment. If we treat her humanely, maybe she'll share information willingly." Fairburn snorted. "Humanely? We're at war. Don't be naive. Medic." Another pause. "You have your duties. See that she remains stable until further orders. Do not get in the way of official interrogations." He dismissed Zane with a curt wave, leaving the office. Zane felt the weight of impending doom settle upon him. Despite being an officer's target of suspicion, he hurried back to check on Nima. The watchtower corridor leading to her holding cell was drab, lit by flickering ceiling lamps. 2 guards stood at the iron door, letting him pass only after verifying orders. Inside, Nima lay on the cot, eyes shut, breathing shallowly. A wave of relief coursed through Zane. At least she was still alive. Her bandages were freshly changed, courtesy of another medic. A half-eaten tray of ration bars sat nearby, indicating she'd been fed. Progress, no matter how slight. Sensing his presence, she stirred, head turning his way. Though her face was hard to read, her ears flicked in acknowledgement. "You," returned. She managed in halting English, the Varethi accent lending a melodic quality to her words. "I did," he answered, crossing to kneel at her side. "How are you feeling?" She inhaled sharply, pressing a hand to her wounded side. "Pain, but better." "Thank you." Her eyes searched his face. Then, like before, he felt that faint mental brush, a curious and gentle whisper in his thoughts. This time, it was accompanied by a swirl of mixed images: Varethi meadows under twin suns, starry nights in open grasslands, and the taste of some sweet fruit he had never known. The sensations emerged and faded in an instant, leaving him breathless. He swallowed, trying to maintain composure. "Nima," he said quietly, "can all Varethi do this?" He tapped his temple. Hoping she understood, she blinked, a hint of surprise in her expression, then shook her head slowly. "We have bond trails," she explained, voice halting as she struggled to find the right words. "But not so strong with outsiders. This, I do not know why. Perhaps your blood in me." The possibility turned his stomach in knots. Had the transfusion somehow fused them psychically? The ramifications were enormous. He studied her face, feeling empathy surge. She was caught in enemy territory, her life dependent on a human medic who had become an outcast in his own ranks for saving her. Outside, the soldiers watched with suspicion. Zane could practically feel their stares through the walls. On top of that, the approaching storms of war threatened to destroy any chance at peaceful resolution. He had to think quickly. If the High Command got their hands on Nima, they would probe her mind, exploit her abilities, possibly torture her. Over the next few days, he wrestled with an impossible dilemma: remain loyal to his oath as a medic, or yield to the war machine's demands. Meanwhile, Nima grew slightly stronger, even managing to walk a few steps with his support. Each time they touched, he sensed the bond deepen. It was no longer just fleeting images. He felt glimpses of her emotions, her fears and hopes, as though they were becoming a part of him. Sometimes, when he dozed off in the corner of her cell, he dreamt of chasing fleeting shadows across a starlit canyon. Leaping from crag to crag with feline agility, he would awake breathless, heart pounding. Indeed, the dividing lines that separated them, once so stark, began to blur, replaced by tenuous trust and shared vulnerability. Then came the morning when an urgent transmission reached the watchtower. A human general was en route, commanding a squad of specialists. Their objective: secure the Varethi scout for immediate transport to a secret facility, rumored to lie deep beneath Heliora's fortress city, a place few returned from. Zane realized that if he did nothing, Nima would vanish into the bowels of some clandestine lab, never to see the light of day again. The thought lit a flame in his heart, one that refused to be extinguished by fear. He had given his blood to save her. Now, he had to decide whether that act was a fleeting moment of compassion or a vow to defend her life, whatever the cost. The arrival of General Morian Devron was as impressive as it was chilling. 4 armored transports rumbled into the watchtower's compound, each bristling with advanced weaponry. Soldiers in pristine uniforms fanned out, scanning the perimeter with practiced efficiency. Devron himself, clad in a black officer's coat, surveyed the place with cold, calculating eyes. His very presence seemed to siphon warmth from the air. Word spread that the general intended to conduct an interrogation immediately. He insisted that Nima be prepared for transport soon after. Zane watched in silent dread as the new arrivals established a secure perimeter, posted extra guards, and demanded access to all logs and medical records. His fellow medics avoided his gaze, unsure whether to sympathize or condemn him for saving the enemy. Time was running out, and Zane knew it. He could not allow Nima to suffer an uncertain fate. Yet defying a general's direct orders could mean a court-martial or worse. His heart pounded as he crept through the corridors, forging a desperate plan. He found Nima's cell guarded by two of Devrin's troopers, silent, watchful men wearing advanced helmets, approaching with calm determination. Zane clutched a tray of medical supplies. "I need to administer sedation for safe transport," he explained, trying to sound clinical. The guards nodded, stepping aside to let him in. Though one kept his rifle half raised. Inside, Nima sat cross-legged on the cot. She looked weaker than before, as if the dread of captivity eroded her spirit. Yet her eyes lit with cautious hope when she saw Zane. He set the tray down and bent to inspect her wound, murmuring so softly that the guards beyond the door could not hear. "I'm getting you out," he whispered, voice trembling. "Tonight, before they take you away." She froze, her gaze flicking anxiously toward the door. "How?" she mouthed, her silent question almost a breath. In his mind, he felt the brush of her thoughts, a swirl of desperate hope and lingering doubt. He offered what he hoped was a reassuring nod. "Trust me," he said, gently taking her hand as if to check her pulse. Their eyes locked, and she gave a slight, understanding nod in return. When he stepped back outside the cell, the guards scrutinized him. "All done, medic." Zane forced a tight smile. "Yes, I gave her a mild sedative. She'll remain docile for the interrogation." He prayed they wouldn't check the dosage. A few hours later, after nightfall, the watchtower was eerily quiet. Most of Devrin's soldiers had retired, relying on a skeleton crew of guards. Zane slipped into the storage area, where he had hidden an outdated stealth field generator. The device was once used by scouts for infiltration missions, and had fallen into disuse after more sophisticated versions emerged. He only hoped it still functioned. He then crept through dim corridors to Nima's cell, tapping lightly on the door. The two guards inside were not expecting an intruder, especially not a medic in plain uniform. Zane acted with a surge of adrenaline, hurling a smoke capsule at their feet. The room filled with acrid fog, causing the guards to cough and stumble. Before they regained composure, he bolted in, yanking Nima to her feet. She grimaced at the sudden movement, but mustered her strength, leaning on him. They slipped past the guards, hacking coughs echoing in the background. Zane activated the stealth generator, enveloping them in a shimmering distortion. With careful steps, they navigated the watchtower's hallways, heartbeats racing. Passing close to a patrolling soldier, they froze, hardly daring to breathe as he walked by, oblivious to the cloaked duo. Reaching the outer gate, they found it locked and guarded by automated turrets. Zane keyed in an override code, courtesy of a console in the guard station. A beep and hiss followed, and the massive gate slid open just wide enough for them to slip through. Snow-laden wind buffeted them as they stepped out into the star-filled night. The aurora slopes shimmered in the distance, a cosmic dance of colors across the horizon. Guards above shouted in confusion, alerted by the breach. Alarms wailed, and spotlights cut across the snowy field. "Go," Zane urged, half pulling Nima along. They ran as best they could, the stealth field flickering with each jarring step. Pulse rifle fire crackled behind them, sending flares of red light streaking overhead. They stumbled over rocky outcroppings and slid down icy embankments, adrenaline fueling each desperate stride. The watchtower's alarms faded into the distance. At last, they took refuge behind a stand of twisted trees, lungs burning, hearts threatening to burst. Zane deactivated the stealth generator to conserve its waning power. Snow spiraled around them, swirling with faint luminescence in the moonlight. Nima clutched her side, breathing heavily. "We are safe," she asked, voice trembling with pain and uncertainty. Not yet, Zane admitted, fear threading his tone. They'll send search parties. We have to keep moving. He then grasped both her hands, looking intently into her golden eyes. I'm sorry, he whispered. I couldn't let them take you. She reached up to rest a hand against his cheek. A surprising gesture of intimacy for a Varethi. Her touch radiated warmth. Once again, he felt that silent connection, stronger now, almost comforting. In his mind, she shared a fleeting impression of deep gratitude, laced with lingering agony. We run, she said, determination stealing across her features. Together, they pressed onward, forging through the cold wilderness, guided by the faint glow of the auroras above. Overhead, the sky was alive with cosmic colors, as though the planet itself bore witness to their flight from captivity. Step by step, they limped into the uncharted frontier, each uncertain of what lay ahead. All they knew was that they must outpace the war machine that sought to claim them both. And so began their journey. Two unlikely fugitives bound by shared blood, forging a fragile trust in a land ravaged by hatred. For 3 nights, Zane and Nima trekked across the frozen wastelands. Each day brought them closer to the Aurora Slopes, a region famed for haunting beauty but also for rugged, unforgiving terrain. Both fugitives struggled with exhaustion, hunger, and the biting cold. At times, Zane worried that Nima's wound would reopen or become infected. The meager supplies he carried were barely enough to keep them alive. Somewhere behind them, human forces undoubtedly scoured the tundra, searching for their renegade medic and the elusive Varethi. Nima, for her part, guided them when her strength allowed, sensing the faint traces of Varethi presence in the distance. She spoke little, conserving energy. Occasionally, she would rest against a rock or crouch behind an icy ridge, ears perked for the faint hum of aircraft overhead. On the 4th day, the sky overhead began to swirl with dark clouds, threatening another storm. The temperature plummeted. They found shelter in a natural cavern, wide enough to house them comfortably, lined with glittering icicles that shimmered in the faint half-light. A small vent overhead let out thin streams of air, preventing suffocation. Here, Zane managed to scrounge together enough dry tinder to start a modest fire. As the flames crackled, he removed Nima's bandages and examined her wound. No sign of infection, he said with relief. Your body's healing fast. Indeed, he had noticed that since the transfusion, she seemed to recover at a slightly accelerated rate. Perhaps the mixture of Varethi and human blood had triggered an unusual synergy. She seemed stronger than a typical wounded combatant, though still far from healthy. She winced but allowed him to reapply fresh gauze. Thank you, she said, softly, tail flicking behind her. Their eyes met, and Zane felt that familiar mental connection stir. Though still alien, it was becoming more natural, as if it were a sense he'd always possessed, but never used. They shared ration bars, chewing the bland, protein-laden food in silence. Thunder rumbled outside, and the wind's keen wail seeped through cracks in the cavern walls. As the night deepened, Nima spoke suddenly. Why do your people fight us, Zane? Her words were slow, halting, as if she were piecing together the human language with care. We have our lands, our ways. Humans have cities, machines. There is space enough for both. Yes, he sighed, staring into the fire, orange glow reflecting in his tired eyes. If only it were that simple. For many years, humans feared the Varethi. They said your psychic abilities threatened our sovereignty. They claimed you spied on us, manipulated our minds. Maybe some of that was propaganda. Or maybe the Varethi saw us as violent invaders. Both sides are blinded by fear. She listened intently, ears twitching at the unfamiliar phrases. We do not seek war, she murmured, but we defend ourselves. Her gaze turned distant. In my clan, we were taught that humans would stop at nothing to consume resources, that they would exploit the land until it was bare. Is this not so? Zane's shoulders slumped. I've seen the greed of my people, he admitted. But also, I've seen compassion. There are those who fight for peace, or who want to coexist. But they're overshadowed by the powerful voices calling for conquest. A silence followed, punctuated by the crackling of the fire. Outside, the storm intensified, lightning flashes illuminating the cavern mouth in brilliant arcs of white and purple. In the half-light, Nima's feline features appeared carved from marble, reflecting a grim determination. At length, she said, my mission was to scout human fortifications, to gather information so we could avoid direct conflict. We prefer stealth, sabotage if we must, but not slaughter. Yet, my team was ambushed. I was the only one to survive. Zane sensed her sorrow through the bond, a deep ache at the loss of her comrades. He nodded, words catching in his throat. I'm sorry, he said quietly. He reached out, a tentative gesture, and placed his hand over hers. She did not flinch away. Hours later, when the storm subsided, they emerged from the cavern. The landscape shimmered under the moonlight, drifts of snow forming ghostly silhouettes. Beyond the horizon, the aurora slopes rose in jagged lines, crowned by swirling curtains of colored light. Their path would take them across a precarious ridge, rumored to be patrolled by neither side due to its treacherous conditions. If they survived that, they might reach the Varethi forest enclaves to the south. They pressed on, their footsteps muffled by deep snow. Each step a testament to survival. The route climbed higher, a series of narrow switchbacks carved into the mountainside. Nima led whenever the bond guided her, pointing out hidden pitfalls or concealed ledges. At times, they had to crawl on hands and knees to avoid sliding into the void below. On the second day of crossing the ridges, they paused to rest on a rocky outcrop. The sky was radiant, awash in a tapestry of colors, pinks, greens, and blues, dancing like specters overhead. Zane felt a sudden wave of longing for the warm spires of Heliora, for simpler days spent healing the sick without the constant threat of war. Nima, sensing his melancholy, rested a hand on his shoulder. Her touch brought renewed warmth. Through the bond, he perceived her silent reassurance, an echo of hope. They were no longer alone, each giving the other strength to face the impossible. They were nearing the crest when a sudden roar from above made them freeze. A human patrol ship, black and sleek, streaked across the sky. Spotlights scanned the ridges below. Zane grabbed Nima, pulling her under a rocky ledge as the light swept past. The whine of the ship's engines resonated in the thin mountain air, sending avalanches of snow tumbling from higher cliffs. Hidden in the shadows, they held their breath, hearts pounding in unison. Eventually, the ship veered away, continuing its search elsewhere. In the distance, a series of muted booms signaled that the war still raged, a reminder of the violence they were trying to escape. With a resigned sigh, Zane and Nima continued, clinging to the narrow path, hoping that by some miracle, they could stay one step ahead of the conflict. Unbeknownst to them, both human and Varethi high commands had taken notice of something extraordinary, the cross-species transfusion that bound them. Each side, for different reasons, desired to harness this event. The humans saw it as a chance to unlock Varethi telepathy, while the Varethi feared a contamination of their sacred bloodlines or, alternatively, a unique gift that might tip the balance of power. As Zane and Nima drew closer to the Varethi enclaves, powerful forces gathered to capture or eliminate them. Their destinies, once separate, were now inexorably entwined. On the 7th day of their journey, they found refuge in a small glacial canyon, where turquoise walls of ice towered around them, forming a silent, crystalline cathedral. The sunlight that filtered through the translucent ice cast ghostly patterns upon the ground, turning the canyon floor into a shifting tapestry of light. Zane collapsed against a smooth ice wall, fatigue etched into every muscle. He tore open the last of their ration bars, splitting it in half to share with Nima. Her face was drawn, eyes rimmed with exhaustion, yet her posture was resolute. She nodded her thanks and ate in silence. As they rested, something within Zane's mind changed. A sudden, intense pressure that nearly made him black out. He gasped, bringing a hand to his temple. Visions danced before his eyes, Memories he knew weren't his. He saw glimpses of Nima's childhood in a lush forest clan, chasing brightly colored insects with her siblings. He felt her awe the first time she witnessed the aurora flares over the mountains. He felt her heartbreak when she received the mission that would separate her from her loved ones. Nima, too, doubled over, as if struck by a psychic wave. When she looked up, shock mingled with concern. "Zane," she breathed, "I see your memories. A city with shining towers, a clinic filled with humans you healed. I see your mother, your father. They were kind." "Yes," he nodded, heart hammering. Somehow, the link had expanded, forging a direct conduit between their minds. The previous gentle brushes of empathy and fleeting images were now an open channel. They were, in that moment, sharing each other's pasts, joys, and traumas. Tears welled in Zane's eyes as he watched Nima's experiences unfold within him, raw and unfiltered. It was overwhelming. They clutched at each other in mutual shock, breath coming in ragged gasps. The canyon's cold air enveloped them, but all they felt was the searing heat of sudden, intimate knowledge. And with that knowledge came an unspoken bond. They were no longer merely fugitive allies. They were two souls partially fused by a twist of fate. When the storm of memories subsided, they leaned on each other for support. "I never imagined," Zane whispered, tears freezing on his cheeks. "Your people, your life. It's so different, and yet so beautiful." Nima swallowed, her feline eyes gleaming. "And yours too," she said, voice trembling. "I saw your empathy. You saved so many people, regardless of status or creed. You wanted to be a healer, not a soldier." For a long moment, they simply sat there, the weight of each other's memories pressing softly in their hearts. Then, with a slight grimace, Zane wiped his cheeks. "We need to move," he said, though his voice was strained. "Every second we linger puts us at risk." They pressed onward, the psychic bond settling into an uneasy equilibrium. A faint hum of shared awareness remained, like a radio signal in the background of their minds. At times, it sparked flashes of mutual thought or synchronized movement. More than once, they had to pause, startled at how attuned they were becoming, finishing each other's actions, almost by reflex. Days blurred together. The mountains gave way to sloping foothills, where evergreens dotted the frozen terrain. The air grew slightly warmer, and they began to see signs of Varethi craftsmanship runes carved into trees, small spirit totems that swayed in the breeze. Nima's steps quickened, drawn by the familiarity of her people's land. Then one morning, as sunlight filtered through the pine branches, they encountered a lone Varethi scout wearing a dark cloak, tail bristling in alarm. The scout's eyes widened at the sight of Nima, and a complicated series of vocalizations in the Varethi tongue followed. Zane didn't fully understand, but Nima responded quickly, her accent thick but urgent. The scout seemed taken aback by Nima's battered condition and the presence of a human. Confusion turned to guarded acceptance when Nima explained, in hurried bursts, their ordeal and the extraordinary bond forged by blood. Though clearly uncertain, the scout gestured for them to follow into deeper forest paths. They agreed, albeit nervously, for the only other alternative was to wander the hostile wilderness with no shelter or guidance. Under the canopy of towering pines, they navigated winding trails lit by ethereal shafts of sunlight. Small animals darted in the underbrush. The forest floor was spongy with moss, dappled with patches of snow. Gradually, the atmosphere shifted. The air vibrated with a subtle energy that Zane could not explain, but felt at the edges of his awareness. His bond with Nima seemed to resonate with the living forest, as if some ancient power recognized their union. Finally, they emerged into a clearing where elaborate wooden structures rose amid the trees of Varethi outpost, or perhaps a small village. Catwalks connected platforms high in the branches, while below, a few huts were woven from living vines. The architecture spoke of a deep unity with nature, a stark contrast to human metal spires. At their approach, several Varethi warriors materialized from the shadows, silent, and poised. Tension thickened the air. Zane felt panic crawl up his spine, but Nima stepped forward, cradling her injured side, speaking rapidly in her native tongue. The scout who had led them nodded, adding testimony. Gradually, the warriors lowered their weapons, albeit with lingering mistrust in their feline eyes. One warrior, slightly older, with streaks of gray fur around her temples, gestured for Zane and Nima to approach. Her gaze flicked between them. She spoke carefully in a mix of Varethi and broken human language. "We know of you. Word travels. You are Nima who was lost, and the human who gave blood." "Yes," Zane nodded, feeling both relief and trepidation. Behind him, he felt Nima's hand rest on his shoulder, a subtle reassurance that he was not alone. The warrior gave a slight bow. "We will bring you before our elders. They must judge your fate." Thus, Zane and Nima stood on the threshold of Varethi territory, uncertain if they would find sanctuary or be labeled abominations. The forest around them whispered in the breeze, as if the land itself waited to witness what would become of the first pair in recorded history to share blood and a psychic bond transcending fear. They were led through the village, traversing wooden pathways that twisted around ancient trunks. Varethi of various ages emerged from doorways and overhead perches to catch a glimpse of the curious duo. A hush followed their passing, punctuated only by soft murmurs and the occasional rustle of leaves. At the heart of the settlement rose a grand communal hall built from living branches intertwined into tall spires. Filigrees of translucent leaves formed an ornate canopy, allowing filtered sunlight to spill into the interior. In the center of this great hall sat a circle of elders, each draped in robes adorned with symbols of their respective clans. Zane could feel his pulse quicken as he and Nima approached, flanked by warriors. Though he had never stood trial, the solemn atmosphere reminded him of a court proceeding except here. The defendants were at the mercy of an unfamiliar culture. Nima straightened. Despite her injuries, mustering the dignity of a Varethi scout, her tail swayed slowly, betraying nervous tension. An elder with silver-streaked fur rising above her brow stood and addressed Nima in their melodic tongue. Nima replied, explaining her reconnaissance mission, her injury, and Zane's intervention. She spoke of the transfusion and the subsequent bond. Murmurs and gasps rippled through the circle at the mention of shared blood. One elder with dark stripes across his face turned his gaze to Zane. In deliberate human speech, he intoned, "You saved Nima's life, risking your own." His tone was neutral, neither praise nor accusation. "Now you bring your war here," Zane swallowed. "I never wanted to bring war," he said, voice trembling slightly. "I just wanted to help her. Are you not a soldier?" The elder pressed, a glint of suspicion in his eyes. "I'm a medic," Zane corrected. "I heal wounds, not cause them." A wave of vulnerability crept over him. "I realize you have no reason to trust me, but I swear, I only wish to keep Nima safe, if you'll allow it." The circle of elders exchanged thoughtful glances. Then, the silver-furred elder, who appeared to preside over them, spoke in a measured tone. "We sense something unusual in you. Human. The blood you share with Nima has forged a bond. It resonates with our telepathic heritage. This is not a trivial matter. Our people hold bloodlines sacred, and such a mingling has never occurred before." A murmur of agreement circled the hall. Zane felt uneasy under their collective scrutiny, but also an odd sense of wonder. The forest-like aroma in the hall, the dappled sunlight, and the melodic resonance of the elders' voices lent the meeting an almost mystical quality. Nima interjected, her voice firm despite her fatigue. "Please, Zane Tenebro is not our enemy. He risked everything to save me. Do not punish him for an act of compassion." Her words hung in the air. Then, the silver-furred elder raised a hand. "We will deliberate," she said. "You both shall remain under our watch, neither free nor prisoners, until we decide. But first, you must rest. Your injuries are not yet healed." Two young attendants, their eyes wide with curiosity, escorted Zane and Nima to a spacious dwelling, perched among twisted branches. Inside, the walls were lined with woven tapestries, and a low table held various herbal concoctions. The place smelled of fragrant resins that calmed the mind. There, under gentle care, Nima's wound was cleaned and treated with Varethi salves. Zane was given a poultice for his aching muscles and frostbitten hands. In the following days, a tenuous routine emerged. Nima resumed light training, determined to regain her strength. She sparred gently with other scouts in open clearings, though she had to pace herself to avoid reopening her wound. Zane assisted the village healers, fascinated by the synergy between Varethi herbal medicine and their subtle telepathic healing arts. While he possessed formal medical knowledge, he discovered he still had much to learn from these forest dwellers. All the while, the elders deliberated, sometimes calling on Zane or Nima to answer questions. Their inquiries probed deeper than mere military intelligence. They sought to understand the moral and spiritual implications of cross-species blood sharing, as if wrestling with ancient prophecies or taboos. In unguarded moments, Nima and Zane spoke quietly, exploring the breadth of their psychic bond. Now that they were in a place of relative safety, they dared to probe each other's minds more intentionally, navigating memories and emotions like two travelers learning a shared language. The experience bound them tighter, each revelation forging deeper trust. Yet, on the third evening, a distant explosion echoed through the forest. Alarms were raised. Scouts scrambled to vantage points high in the treetops. News traveled quickly. A human strike team had breached Varethi territory, possibly in pursuit of the fugitives. Panic rippled through the village. Elders shouted orders to evacuate the vulnerable, while warriors readied their weapons, old and new. Zane's blood turned cold. He knew the human forces would not show mercy. They would come armed with advanced firepower. Nima, alarm in her eyes, gripped his arm. "They followed us," she said in a hushed tone, a tremor in her voice. Uncertainty tore at Zane's conscience. He couldn't stand by while the village was attacked in a likely bid to capture him and Nima. Though these were not his people, they had sheltered him, shown him compassion. Now they stood on the brink of destruction. He exhaled, dread coiling in his gut. "I have to try to reason with them," he said, aware of how naive that sounded. Nima looked torn. "They won't listen," she warned, ears flattening. "Humans are in war mode. Our clan is ready to fight. More blood will be spilled." Her words hung in the charged air. Even so, Zane felt a spark of resolve. "Then I'll do whatever I can to stop it. We have to show them that we're living proof that our races can help each other. Maybe that will be enough, maybe." Though uncertainty weighed upon them, they acted. Gathering what supplies they could, they joined the cluster of Varethi warriors heading out to meet the intruders before they reached the heart of the settlement. Zane carried no rifle, only a medic's satchel and a sidearm he hoped not to use. Nima, still not fully healed, insisted on accompanying him, her eyes set in fierce determination. And so the two walked side by side, each footstep echoing the unity that their shared blood had forged. Though the future was clouded by the threat of imminent conflict, their bond glowed bright, a beacon of possibility in a world consumed by fear and hatred. Dusk arrived, painting the sky in deep purples and soft pinks. The forest canopy stirred with anxious energy as Varethi warriors, camouflaged among branches, scanned the horizon with sharpened senses. Zane, heart thundering in his chest, followed Nima through the undergrowth toward the perimeter. The closer they came, the louder the sounds of human machinery rumbled. Battle mechs stomped on the forest floor, their armor reflecting the last rays of twilight. In the distance, flickers of muzzle flash lit the gloom. Pulses of laser fire carved glowing arcs through the air, and the acrid smell of ozone drifted on the breeze. Clearly, the human strike team had encountered Varethi resistance. Cries echoed, both human and Varethi, revealing that blood had already been spilled. Zane signaled for Nima to wait, stepping forward alone into a small clearing. Raising his arms high to show he bore no threat, he shouted, "Stop! Cease fire!" His voice trembled, drowned momentarily by an explosion that shook the ground. Overhead, A war drone buzzed ominously. Spotlights converged on him, forcing him to shield his eyes. He could feel the tension in the air, a single trigger pull away from a massacre. Then, through the harsh lights, he heard an amplified voice, one he recognized with a twist of dread. "Medic Tenebro," barked General Morian Devrin over the loudspeaker. "You are wanted for treason against humanity. Surrender immediately and deliver the Varethi scout." Zane licked his dry lips, sweat beaded on his brow, but he stood firm. "General," he called back, "I have no desire to fight you. We've discovered something unprecedented. Human and Varethi blood can mix. It saved a life and formed a bond. Let us prove that peace is possible." A hush seemed to fall, as if the entire forest inhaled. Beside a towering mech, the general emerged, face hidden behind tinted goggles. He lifted a megaphone to his lips. "Peace," he repeated, his tone dripping with scorn. "Our orders are clear. The Varethi are a threat. You will stand down, or we will open fire." Behind him, ranks of soldiers aimed their rifles, while overhead, the war drone circled like a vulture. Zane felt a surge of panic, but also a wave of courage from the bond he shared with Nima. He sensed her presence behind him, silent yet unwavering. He raised his voice once more. "If we continue this war, countless will die on both sides. But Nima and I represent what could be a bridge between our species. Our blood is literally mixed. If we can do that, maybe we can finally end this cycle of hatred." Silence stretched. Zane's words hung in the stagnant air. Then, from the treetops, the silver-furred Varethi elder stepped into view on a sturdy branch. She signaled to her warriors, and they held their fire. Though tension radiated through every movement, she uttered a haunting call that echoed across the clearing. With fluid grace, a group of Varethi scouts emerged from the foliage, each holding weapons but aiming them at the ground. "General Devrin," the elder called, her voice carrying supernatural resonance. "We have no wish to destroy your people, but we will defend our homes. This war can end, if you choose to see reason." The general hesitated, a gloved hand hovering near his holster. Zane could almost sense the man's inner conflict. Around them, the forest crackled with the heightened potential for violence. Then, with a sudden motion, Devrin slammed his fist on the mech's hull. "Enough!" he growled. "Our cause is righteous. We cannot turn back now." In that instant, the muzzle of a soldier's rifle glowed hot, aiming at the elder. Zane's eyes widened in horror. Before the soldier could fire, Nima leaped from the shadows, body moving with feline agility. She tackled the soldier, sending the shot harmlessly into the ground. Roars erupted from both sides, weapons raised in reflex. But then something extraordinary happened. Zane felt a burst of psychic energy surge through the bond. Nima's power flared like a living flame, magnified by the fragment of human essence that coursed in her veins. It rippled outward in an invisible shockwave, passing through humans and Varethi alike. Soldiers froze in place, rifles wavering. The war drone above sputtered, momentarily disoriented. In that moment of stillness, minds brushed against each other. A fleeting resonance connected the two factions, revealing glimpses of shared fears, desires, regrets, and hopes. It was not a full telepathic communion, but it was enough to jar everyone out of the madness of reflexive violence. Zane dropped to his knees, overwhelmed by the rush. He saw a vision of peace, a future where humans and Varethi coexisted, forging alliances instead of weapons. Beside him, Nima's eyes glowed with tears. The elder stared at her palms, as if she could scarcely believe the connection she had felt. Even General Devran stumbled, pressing a hand to his helmet as if to steady himself. The wave of empathy faded, leaving a stunned silence in its wake. No one fired a shot. Instead, the clearing was awash in the soft hum of possibility, heart pounding. Zane managed to stand. "General," he said softly, "look at your men. They felt what we felt. The Varethi felt it too. We don't have to keep killing." Slowly, the general removed his goggles. His eyes glistened with a storm of emotions: anger, confusion, awe. For a long moment, He said nothing, the forest falling quiet around him. Then, as though a great weight had been lifted from his shoulders, he nodded, letting his hand fall away from his holster. Soon, the human soldiers lowered their rifles. Varethi warriors unclenched fists from spear shafts and bows. The silver-furred elder descended gracefully, offering a cautious, dignified bow toward Devron. The general exhaled, stepping forward to meet her. Wariness etched on his face. "I cannot promise how the high command will react," he admitted, voice gruff, but subdued. "But I can't deny what I just experienced. This war, it has to stop somewhere." The elder offered a faint smile. "Then let it begin here, with open dialogue instead of open fire." In the following days, an uneasy armistice took hold in this corner of Nova Astra. Word spread of the miraculous event, of how a human medic's act of compassion had led to the forging of a psychic bond that halted a battle in its tracks. Diplomats from both sides ventured into the forest, greeted by scouts and guided to meet with human officers. Tension lingered, for trust is not won overnight. Yet a fragile seed of hope took root where once only hatred flourished. Zane and Nima, at the heart of it all, found themselves heralded as living symbols of unity. Though each side had factions that viewed them with suspicion, some called it heresy. Others called it destiny. They remained resolute in their bond. Whenever skepticism arose, they simply demonstrated that shared empathy once more, reminding everyone that beyond blood, beyond species, there lay a common thread of life worth protecting. Months later, as the snows receded and new life sprang from the thawed earth, the first formal peace talks convened in a neutral zone near the Aurora slopes. Representatives of Heliora's government and Varethi clan elders gathered under makeshift tents, forging a ceasefire that both hoped would evolve into lasting harmony. It was not a perfect process. Distrust and anger lurked in dark corners, but it was a start. And on one clear morning, Zane stood at the edge of a ridge, overlooking a lush valley. Nima stepped beside him, her tail swaying gently. They shared a look that spoke volumes, the experiences etched in their minds. The shared memories and psychic resonance had bonded them forever as they surveyed the horizon, where sunlight broke through parted clouds. They knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. In the end, the cost of war was high, but the reward of peace was beyond measure. Nova Astra still bore scars, and perhaps it always would. Yet there, upon that ridge, standing hand in hand, human and Varethi alike, they proved that a single act of compassion had the power to mend wounds that once seemed unhealable. United by blood, guided by hope, Zane and Nima dared to look toward a tomorrow no longer shaped by fear, but by the shimmering promise of understanding and a love that transcended worlds.